Let's see if I can finish this video on time. I have 4 books to read for this 25 for 2025 vlog. All in all, I have 8 books left at this point, so 4 for November and 4 for December. These are the ones I picked for November, and I have 1 week left now to complete this video. I am halfway through 2 of the books, so let's talk about it. The first book I'm reading for this vlog is the last book in the Renegade series, Supernova by Marissa Meyer. This is the special edition in German of book 3, but I'm not reading this edition. I'm reading this one, the English version, and listening to the English audiobook. And I'm just updating my German copy to update you here. You can see I'm almost halfway through, not completely. I have 2 chapters left to complete the first half, but nonetheless, I wanted to update you now because I'm filming updates right now. And I can tell you this is book 3, the final book in a trilogy. It started with Renegades. It is a superhero versus villains dystopia. And I liked book 1, book 2 was okay, and book 3 also just okay. I'm not the biggest fan of it, especially the logic in this series. It is not working at all in book 3. It was lacking in book 2, and now we lost all the logic because what happens in the head of these people make no sense, except they are really, really stupid, which they are not supposed to be. So it is super annoying at this point. And my buddy read partner, Julia, and I are criticizing a lot of this plot, a lot of the character decisions, a lot of the thoughts of the characters, because we think it doesn't make sense and we don't think this is realistic behavior, which is the complete opposite of book 1. I can remember for book 1 I talked really positive about how realistic it is and that I can understand the struggles and problems of the characters. I wished we still had this. I don't want to talk too much of the plot because it is the final book in a trilogy and I don't want to spoil you as always. I will see how the second half turns out of Supernova and I will talk to you after I finish the book. And I have finished now the Renegades trilogy. Yay! I'm really happy that I finished this series now by Marissa Meyer, but I'm not really happy about the book or the ending because book 3 was disappointing to me and I didn't like it. It got worse for me from book to book. So, book 1 I liked, book 2 was just okay, and there wasn't much development of the characters or the plot. So I really had my hopes up for book 3 now, but I was disappointed. And my buddy read partner also didn't like the book. So we will both unhaul the series now. And that's mostly because we didn't like how the characters behaved. We didn't like the character development. We didn't like the end of the story. There was so much logic that didn't fit. So many things that made us rage and really angry. And I would have DNF'd Supernova if I would have read it alone, but that was not the case. And Julia already read the whole book. I wanted to read her comments, so I suffered through it to read her comments, to discuss this book with her. And I had a good time with the buddy read, but not with the book. And as I said, I will unhaul the series now. These are super pretty special editions, but I hope they can find a better home now. And I will go on to the next book now. And here we have the second book of this vlog, 5 Years, 5 Stories by the publisher Lux, a German publisher. And this book is from 2012, so a few years old. It was on my TBR since 2015, so for 10 years now. And I'm finally reading it. I don't know if you can see it there. I'm over halfway through, around 60% into the book, and I've read now 3 out of 5 stories. The first story was a Hades and Persephone retelling, with the twist that they were already together and Persephone's mother kidnapped her, and Persephone has amnesia, so she can't remember anything about Hades. She thinks she grew up in our world with her mother, and she doesn't have the best relationship with her mother, but it is what it is. And she tries her best to be positive about life, but because of what her mother did to her, she loses herself over time, and Hades is really worried. So he intervenes, he meets up with Persephone and tries to flirt with her new identity so she can fall in love with him again. And I really loved this twist. The story was good, the writing was good. It was only 70 pages, so these are all little novellas. And I enjoyed this first story by Annika Dick. And I also enjoyed the second story, which was by Julia Druber. By the way, these are all German authors, so it is all German romantasy. The publisher made a writing contest in 2012, and these 5 stories were the winners. And the second story had similarities with the Guild Hunter series by Nalini Singh, if you know that. We had angels, we had fallen angels, and we had hunters, and they all need to work together to capture souls and end their lives. That is their task. Our female main character is the boss of the hunters, and our male main character left the hunters years ago and came back now. She is not very happy with that, but he tells them, "You need to stay alert. The angels want to kill the hunters and the fallen now because they think the fallen are bad people, and the hunters are now too because they work together with the fallen." So our main characters need to unite to fight against the angels. The story was full of drama, full of action, and I really liked it. It was super entertaining. So I really had a good time with it. And I also had a good time with story 3, which was by Bianca Yosivoni. Surprisingly, this was my first romantasy by her. In the meantime, she published a lot of romantasy books, but I haven't read them yet. And this story was quite morbid because our female main character is at the funeral of her grandmother and is really suffering And when she left the funeral, she was involved in an accident with a car and died. So she meets her grandmother in the afterlife, and her grandmother tells her, "This was a mistake. You was not supposed to die this soon. You get a second chance." But the second chance she has not in her former life, but she is now in a completely different body. She has a completely new life, and she really struggles with the thought that she is supposed to start from scratch and that she should forget all about her family. We also had a romance in this story, but I don't want to tell you too much about it. And we'll continue now with story 4 and 5, and we'll talk to you afterwards. Story update for story 4 and 5 of this book. Story 4 was a historical romantasy, which is not my kind of story. I don't like to read historical things. I don't enjoy that. And I didn't like the fourth story of this book. Not because of the historical setting, but more because I didn't like the story at all. I didn't like how the characters behaved, how the spice was pressured into the story and came out of nowhere and didn't make any sense. But let's give you a little bit of context. We are in Paris here, and we have our female main character. She's the child of an angel, and she has healing powers that she uses to help the humans. So I asked myself in this time, if her powers are known by some humans, wouldn't she be titled a witch? Wouldn't she be judged by society? I don't know. That didn't felt right for me, that she can help these people and nobody cares. And our main character, she knows from her past, and they meet each other on a party where every guest except our female main character is murdered, and our male main character rescues her. But in reality, he and the other children of fallen angels are the killers, and they want to murder her too. But he developed feelings for her a long time ago. So he's struggling now with his task and wants to protect her. So there's a lot going on in under 100 pages. And as I said, a lot of things came out of nowhere, like the spicy scene we had right next to a lot of dead people. So I wasn't a fan of that. And then I read story 5 of this book, the last story, which was a shapeshifter story that was placed in Germany, so around Munich. And I'm not a big fan of German setting, and especially the female main character behaved pretty stupid because she knows there are some people going around killing young women, and constantly she leaves the house alone, wanders through the nature, and is then surprised when the enemies find her. The love story was also pretty obvious, so not the biggest fan of story 5, but I liked the story more than story 4. I think the story I liked the most was story 3, the one by Bianca Josivoni, because that one surprised me the most. and I was emotionally invested. I also liked story 1 and 2, and I liked story 5. So, all in all, I am happy that I finally read this book that was over 10 years on my TBR now, which means I can now continue with the Black Dagger universe. I will sneak in one more book in this video because chronologically, Possession by J.R. Ward, the fifth book in the Fallen Angels series, is the book I need to read before I read The King by J.R. Ward. So let's talk about it. I am halfway through book 5 now of Fallen Angels, and I must say it is my least favorite of the series so far because 50% into the story, and Jim didn't even think once about saving the next soul. The next round is already going on. Divina is doing her thing, and Jim, the only thing he does is taking care of Sissy, which is already the biggest topic for him for the last 3 books. So it feels like he doesn't care at all about the game that is going on. If you don't know the Fallen Angel series, it is about a game good against evil, so heaven against hell. They decided to play one last game to decide the fate for the rest of time. So if the good side wins or the bad side, and they decided to play 7 rounds, and who wins more rounds out of these 7 wins the game. Each round is about saving one soul that is on the edge to decide their own fate. So they need to make a big decision that leads them to the good or the bad side. And Jim and his team need to find the soul and try to influence them. But as I said, so far he doesn't care now in round 5 and only takes care of Sissy. I won't go into detail here because I don't want to spoil anything. So let's talk about the main plot of the book, which is the story of Kate. She is our female main character here and probably the soul that needs to be rescued, because before the story begins, she is a normal woman, an art teacher. She has a really boring life, but suddenly she starts to date 2 guys. One is a super cute rock star, and the other one is a bodyguard in a nightclub. And she develops feelings for both of them, but the guys don't know about each other so far. And I don't like that Kate is switching between these guys again and again and can't decide, doesn't tell them about the other guy, and just continues with everything. I mean, I don't know her that well, but everything she does doesn't feel like her. So it is complicated, and I don't like the plot of book 5. But I will continue and tell you more about it after I finished the book. And I finished now Possession by J.R. Ward, and can say book 5 of the Fallen Angel series was my least favorite so far, because Jim, our hero that should influence the people to make the right decisions for their souls, almost did nothing here in this book. He cared more for Sissy, and that is not helping the story, and that is not his task he should do. We also haven't had a lot of time with Adrian, so Jim's teammate, And we also haven't had a lot of time with Divina, our enemy, but we had a lot of time with our female main character and the two male main characters. I already explained the situation that she is dating two guys and they don't know about each other. And I didn't even know a long time which soul we are talking about. So which person need to be rescued? I was very confused by this. And I didn't like the romance in this book. I'm sorry. I finished the book a few days ago, so I'm so sorry. I forgot the names of the characters. But it all felt a little bit wrong, no matter with which guy she was with. So, fingers crossed, the next book will be better. It will be the final book of the Fallen Angel series. But before I read that, I will read The King by J. Award, the next book in the Black Dagger Brotherhood series. And these two books are on my list for this video. So, this is the first half of The King, the 12th book in the series, and I already finished this first half of the story. And surprisingly, not as much miscommunication as I expected here. Actually, way less than I expected. So that is very positive. But that doesn't mean there is nothing I criticized while reading the story. First and foremost, our main couple for the story should be Reth and Beth, but in reality, I don't see that we have any main couple here. We have three couples we have the focus on, and the focus is pretty similar for each couple. That is not bad. It was just not what I expected. And the problem between Reth and Beth was super obvious after the last book. So we already know what they have to deal with in The King now. And Reth also deals a lot with being the king of the vampires and with everything he has to do to fulfill this job. He is not very happy with it, but I don't want to tell you much more about that because already book 12 and I don't want to spoil too much. But I can say I also really enjoy the story about Sola and Asael, except the fact that Asael is taking drugs and that this is portrayed as okay and that you can do this. I hate that, but everything else I really enjoy. And I also enjoy learning more about Tress and the Shadows. The romance about him and Selena is nothing new in the series, but I'm intrigued to see how J. Award wants to find a solution for the problem Tress has here. So I continue reading now with the second half of The King. And as you can see, I already started the second half. Yes, I'm a bit late with my updates, but today we have December 3rd, and the video with these four books should already be out yesterday. So I didn't finish my books on time. I decided to change my plans. No vlog on December 2nd, but I will add my four books that I want to read for December to this vlog now and make it one big vlog to finish my 25 for 2025 list, which means that I will also read now these four books in this vlog. But before I do that, I will finish The King and will talk to you then. And I did it! I finally finished The King by J.R. Ward, Book 12 in the Black Dagger Brotherhood series. And surprisingly, I liked this more than I thought I would. Because, as I said before, I expected a lot of miscommunication here and was already frustrated by that before I even started the book. But there wasn't that much miscommunication. Instead, there was a lot of open communication, which surprised me. Of course, we had some miscommunication. We can't live totally without it. And I'm definitely not agreeing with Beth's reasons for having a child. But here we are now. In the end, I'm totally okay with how it ended and with the character development of Wrath. Because, yes, especially in the last quarter of the story, so the last half of this book, there was the focus on Wrath and Beth. So they were the main couple, which I missed in the first half. And there were some really, really cute moments, which I loved. But of course, we also had drama, and I really hope that we get more of Assail and Solar in the future books. And I can't wait to read more about Tress and Selena either, especially with the illness of Selena that I don't really understand yet. And obviously also with Tress' future that is already planned. So I'm surprisingly excited to continue. But before I do that, I will read some other books and already started them. So I have an update now for you for In unserem Universum sind wir unendlich, a German YA story that will have a sad end, or at least that is what I'm expecting here, because I started this book knowing nothing about it, but the vibe of it was clear very, very fast, because one of our main characters is sick and will be dying. He has cancer in the end stadium and probably only a few months left. And our main characters meet the first time in the hospital, where Ansel, our main character and our POV, is working at the moment. He wants to study medicine, but he didn't got in this year, so he works in the hospital in the meantime. And he is one of the nurses that takes care of Emil. And from the first moment on, there is a spark between the characters, and Ansel doesn't know what to do because he wants to be professional, but on the other side, there is this feeling when he sees Emil. But Ansel is also a very, very shy and quiet guy. So it is not that easy for him to live with these growing feelings. But they get together, they start a relationship, knowing from the very start that this won't last forever because Emil will die at some point. So, one of his last wishes is now to make experiences, to go on an adventure, and make a road trip with Ansel. I really, really like this book so far. I'm now halfway through and can't wait to continue, even if I'm at the same time afraid to read more of it because I don't want for Emil to die. I really, really like him. And maybe this will be a 5-star book for me. We will see in the end how I feel about it. Some of Ansel's thoughts, especially in the beginning of the story, were a bit too innocent for me for his age. But we got over that after he got together with Emil. And I would say I will tell you more when I finished the book. Let's get a little bit into winter mood here because I don't feel like we have already winter. We have December, Christmas is coming around in a few days, and I am in no Christmas mood at all, so maybe this helps a bit. We will see, but what I can say is that I finished in unserem Universum sind wir unendlich. And that I really, really liked the book. Not loved, so no 5-star book, but a solid 4-star read. Especially in the beginnings, the thoughts of Ansel were a little bit too naive for me. And I missed a bit of depth in the relationship between Ansel and Emil because it was love at first sight and they just got together, and most of the time they just kissed and made out. So there was not that much communication except about the fact that Emil will die and that he had cancer. But after the start of the relationship, I was okay with that and really enjoyed the story, the road trip they made together through France and the UK. There were some really, really emotional scenes, and I shed a few tears here, even before the end of the story, where I cried the most because we knew from the start of this book how this book will end and that Amy will die. And of course, this was really, really emotional, especially when you have memories of a person dying from cancer, which I have. My great uncle died because of cancer. And I was young then, I was a kid, and I didn't really see how it got worse from him. So all of my memories with him are really great, but it didn't make it easier to go through this process with Emil and Ansel. And seeing him die here in this book, as I said, I cried a lot in the end of the story because it all felt so real and I felt the heartbreak of these characters. And I really, really appreciate this book and am really glad that I've read it now because I think it is super important to read about these difficult topics, to learn to be empathetic with it and to understand what's really happening on the emotional basis when someone has cancer and there is no hope. A lot of times it is not talked about in our society, and I don't think that's a good thing. So I really appreciate these books, and I'm sure I will think about it a lot even after I finished the book now. But finishing this book also means that I can continue now with another read, and that will be The Passengers by John Mars. And here I am already halfway through the next book. I really like the covers here, but I don't want to talk about the cover. I want to talk about the story. And I'm really, really flying through these pages. I really like the topic of the story that is set around self driving cars that are common now in this version of the UK. And some of these cars are now hacked and kidnapped by a mysterious kidnapper. He also hacks the government and so many else and makes a whole show out of it so everybody can see it in the news, can see the kidnapped passengers in their cars and how they react to everything. and they can see the group that was set up by the government because they decide in this group about car accidents and if the self-driving car was the cause of the accident or if somebody else was the cause. So we have a lot of POVs in this book, which is surprisingly okay to me. I'm mostly not a fan of this, but here it works pretty well. And it is very, very fast paced because as I am halfway through now, we already had some losses here, some cars that exploded, and people that needed to die or needed in the eyes of the kidnapper. There are a lot of discussions with the kidnapper. There are a lot of plot twists, which I really like. I'm a fan of that. And the stakes are really high here. So I definitely enjoy my time with the passengers and am really liking the aspect of criticizing AI and making aware what can happen if we normalize using AI for everything. So far, I'm very, very happy about my read here, and I will continue today. So, hopefully, I can update you soon after I finish the book. And I finished The Passengers, and I think this is a really, really great book, but also has some difficulties because I think certain parts of the books are problematic, especially because there is no trigger warning in this book. And if pedophilia is discussed, it should have a trigger warning or suicide because of depression. Please give me a trigger warnings for topics like that because even if this is a thriller, I am not prepared to read about problematic things like this and I want to be warned about it. This book is from 2020 and yes, trigger warnings were a thing in 2020 and especially the pedophilia topic kicked hard here, even for me, and I'm not triggered by it. So please be aware that these topics are discussed in The Passengers, and there is a lot of problematic behavior around these topics. But all in all, I really enjoyed this book. It was really fast paced. We had a lot of action, a lot of discussions about AI. But I don't know if I like the ending of this book so much. I mean, don't get me wrong, I really was a fan of how the story itself ended, so how the plot developed over time and how the plot ended. But the whole background of Jude and the whole motivation for what he did in this story, I don't know, I think it's still problematic. But that's okay, I can live with that. What came out of nowhere was the romance plot for the last chapter or the second to last chapter because I think there was no need for it at all. This was a thriller, not a romance book, and we don't need these epilogue, super happy, happy ends, if you know what I mean. We had some of this here, and it felt weird in a thriller. But for me, this is a 4-star book. I really enjoyed it, and I also enjoyed that we had some connections to the one by John Mars, and that the dating app from there was also a thing in The Passengers now. I'm a really big fan of things like that. And I can't wait to see if in The Watchers by John Mars we also have some connections to the one and the passengers. But I don't have The Watchers here yet. So maybe I will add it to my TBR in 2026. I have it on my wish list now because I really like these kinds of thrillers, and I hope I can read some more of it in the next year. But before I do that, let's get to the last book in the Fallen Angel series, because that is my last reread of the Black Dagger universe and the next book that I need to read. So let's do this reread before I can read the last books from my 25 for 2025 list. Okay, let's make this quick because before I read The Shadows, I need to read Immortal, the last book in the Fallen Angel series. It is a reread like all the other books in the series, but I can't remember much about it. And I don't want to spend too much time talking about it because I am now two-thirds into the story and I really, really like the plot. It is completely different to everything else in the series. There was a scheme throughout every book before, and it is not here in book 6. So the stakes are high. There is a lot of action. There are a lot of plot twists, which I really like because with that the story is unpredictable. And if it wouldn't be a reread, I couldn't say how it would end. So I really, really love that. But I hate the romance. It is super, super cringe. It feels so wrong to me because we have a big age gap here, and our female main character went to high school before the events of the story, and our male main character is a lot older. So this feels like a romance we shouldn't have at all. And this is my face when I read a spicy scene between the two of them or listen to it, which makes it worse. I can't do that. I don't want to do that, but I don't want to skip the scenes, so I'm pushing through it. But as I said, not a fan at all, and I don't think this will change in the last third of the book. But we'll see, and I talk to you after I finished it. I have finished now Immortal by J.R. Ward, and let's make it quick. I finished the Fallen Angel series now, and I am so glad that I am finished now with this because book 5 was bad and book 6 I didn't like it at all. I hated the romance. I think it is super, super problematic. The plot was good. I already told you that there were a lot of surprises. It was a lot more unpredictable than the 5 books before, and I really enjoyed that. I think the ending of the series and the book was fitting for everything. But for me, it was all overshadowed by the romance of this book, and I couldn't get past that. I'm very intrigued to see what my buddy rate partner Marin will say. She hasn't even started book 6 yet. She is still reading book 5, and she's still reading The King. So I will read now The Shadows next. So the last 2 books from my 25 for 2025 list. So I can finish this challenge before the year ends. After that, I will take a break so Marin can catch up. And then we decide if we continue these universe buddy reads in the next year in 2026. My hopes are high now for the shadows. So let's start, and I will talk to you when I'm halfway through the book. Guys, at this point, I need to ask myself, why I still do this to myself, because I finished now the first half of The Shadows, and I'm so annoyed by these storylines. I'm not enjoying it anymore. And yes, I will read the second half of the stories, but I really don't see myself continuing this universe. I really need to pressure myself into reading. It is okay when I start reading, but taking the book and start reading and continuing this story, I really need to pressure myself. I can't say it more positively. And my feelings are that Maron will have the same issue when she will be at this point of the universe. I'm a little bit ahead of her here because I wanted to finish my books by the end of the year to finish this video, to finish my 25 for 2025 list. But let's talk a little bit more about The Shadows Part 1. Let's make it quick because I said I don't enjoy the story anymore. There are so many storylines in this book that it is overwhelming. I even forget regularly about some of them, and you can't even get really in depth with the storylines anymore because there is so much. And there's also so much problematic behavior, so much miscommunication between the characters that I am just annoyed. There are some things that have potential and that intrigue me enough to continue right now. But all in all, that's not enough to buy more books of the series, because this and the second part of The Shadows are the last books from the Black Dagger universe on my TBR. But I will discuss if Marin and I will continue with her after she caught up with my reads, so probably in January. The decision has to wait a little bit until then, and I don't really want to get in too much detail about The Shadows. The one thing I also want to say is that this is the story of Tress and Selena, and that I really enjoy getting more into depth of the shadows and what's going on with them, their background, their history, their society. I really enjoy that part, even if there is a lot of problematic history and behavior. For the shadows, they are more like a sect. But as I said, a lot of other storylines. I can't even keep up with everything. So I would say let's continue, and I will talk to you after I finish The Shadows. I finished now the second part, so the whole book of The Shadows, and we not only had one main story here, we had two. The one was Tress and Selena. I already told you about that after the first part of The Shadows. But we also had now a lot of focus on the story of Tress' twin brother, Iam, and his romance. Even if I think from the first chapter his female counterpart became part of the story, it was super obvious how it all will develop over the story and how it will end. So, no real plot twists there. And some of the side stories were completely ignored for the last 200 chapters of the story, which I'm not a fan of. So, I don't know what's going on with Thro, with Xor, or even with Lucas, because we just didn't get updates here, even if other storylines continued. and I think that's not the best storytelling. I'm also not a fan of the end for Tress and Selena. I'm really, really disappointed here. And I already said this before. There are some parts of this story that intrigue me to continue, but not enough to make up my disappointment on other parts. So, if it were up to me, I probably wouldn't continue the series or the universe in general. The next book would be the first book of a new series in this universe, the Black Dagger Legacy series. But I will make my decision with Myron, my buddy read partner, when she caught up with me. So I'm taking a break for January now from this universe, which is probably a good thing. Maybe that's just what I needed. So maybe I'm okay after the break to continue with this universe. We will see. I can't see in the future. But for now, that means this was my last book from my 25 for 2025 list. So I finished my challenge here. I'm really, really proud of myself. And this also means that I'm finishing this vlog now, which is a good thing because this vlog should go online today in a few hours. So I need to edit this clip. Everything else is already finished. So let me put away the mic for 1 second so I can show you all 8 physical books that I've read for this vlog, plus the 2 Fallen Angels book that I've read as an ebook. That's it, a really big stack, but all the books that I've read in November and December now for this vlog to complete my list. So after I finished the challenge for this year, should I make a list with 26 books for 2026? I will probably do that over the next few days. We'll make a video with these 26 books and will challenge myself to read them in the next year, because every year I use this challenge to work on my old TBR books and pick only books from my old TBR. So the books that I've got 2015 to 2022, there are a lot of it. So I need to choose my battles here. And you will probably see that at the beginning of 2026. So please tell me in the comments if you have read any of the books I've read in this vlog. Have you challenged yourself this year with some reading goals? Like this video if you wanna, follow my channel, and I will see you next time. Bye!